Okay, so today I wanted to discuss common fingers between pairs of open chords. And if you know these common fingers between these pairs of chords, it facilitates chord changing, makes it much easier, and also eliminates a lot of unnecessary movement of fingers. So the first pair I want to discuss would be E major to E minor. And this is E major. Now, to get from E major to E minor, all you're doing is lifting off finger number 1 to form E minor. So the next pair I want to discuss, since we're on E already, would be E major to E7. In which case, all you're doing from E major is lifting off finger number 3, and now you're forming E7. So here's E major again. And lifting off finger 3, you have E7. The next pair I want to discuss would be A minor to C. Now, A minor to C is a very easy change. All you're doing is moving finger 3 from string 3, fret 2, moving it over to string 5, fret 3. But fingers 1 and 2 remain the same. So here's A minor. Now, going to C, only finger 3 moves, fingers 1 and 2 stay the same. The next one I want to mention would be A minor, which we're already on, to A7. Now, this is not as common of a change, but you may come across it, so it's useful to know. So A minor to A7, you're lifting off 1, leaving 2 the same, and moving 3 over to string 2, fret 2. So again, here's A minor, and then here's A7. You see the second finger there didn't move. The next pair of chords I want to discuss, since we're already in these A minor chords, would be A minor to D7. When doing this chord change, finger number 1 is the common finger, and that one doesn't move. Fingers 2 and 3 move. Finger 2 moves over to string 3, fret 2, and finger 3 moves over to string 1, fret 2. So here's A minor again. And then going to D7. See, finger 1 didn't move. Here's D7. So now the next pair of chords I wanted to mention would be again A minor, but this time going to B7. And so when doing that, finger 3 is the one that doesn't move from going from A minor to B7. Here's A minor. Now B7. Finger 3 is the common one. Now, it's very important to practice these pairs of chords going back and forth several times, because usually one of the chord changes going from one to another is more difficult than the one coming back or the reverse of that. So the next pair of chords I wanted to mention with common finger would be C to D7. So here's C. Now going to D7, finger 2 moves over to string 3, fret 2, and finger 3 moves over to string 1, fret 2. So the next pair of chords I wanted to discuss would be C to A7. This is not a very common change, but it is good to know, and it does sound good. C, going to A7, lifting off finger 1, moving 3 over to string 2, fret 2, and finger 2 remains the same. The next pair of chords I wanted to discuss with common finger between them would be G to E minor. Now many people like to finger G like this, with first finger 5th string 2nd fret, second finger 6th string 3rd fret, and third finger 1st string 3rd fret. But this actually is not a good fingering of G. Many books have this fingering of G in it, but it really is not good because it is not applicable to many songs, and it isn't applicable to many chord changes. It doesn't facilitate the changes and make them easier. I would do this first fingering of G with finger 2 on string 5, fret 2, finger 3 on string 6, fret 3, and finger 4 on string 1, fret 3. And then, going from this fingering of G to E minor, the second finger remains the same and is the common one. So here's this G. And see, when going to E minor, third finger just moves over to the 4th string, 2nd fret, but finger 2 stays the same. This would be an example of a pair of chords that is important to go back and forth many times between them. As you see, G to E minor is really not too hard of a change at all. But E minor, going back to this fingering of G, is much harder. So the next one I wanted to mention would be this fingering of G going to B7. Now, when going from this to B7, the second finger remains the same. And then the first moves over to string 4, fret 1, and the 4 moves over to string 1, fret 2. So here's that G again. And then here's the B7. As you see, the second finger didn't move. So while we're on this fingering of G, I also wanted to mention G to E major, and in which case the second finger is still the common finger between this fingering of G and E major. Here's this G, and then here's E major, okay, so yet another good reason to finger the G like this is because this fingering of G also facilitates another chord change with a pair of chords with common fingers. In this case, it would be this G going to G7, and in which case all you're doing is lifting off finger 4 from string 1, fret 3, then placing finger 1 on string 1, fret 1. So now that is G7. And in this case, you not only have one finger that is common between the chords, but two. Fingers 2 and 3. So here's G, and here's G7. And as you see, fingers 2 and 3 did not move. Okay, so now that we're discussing this fingering of G, using 2, 3, and 4, I wanted to mention another pair of chords that has a common finger using this G, and that would be this G to E7, in which case you're lifting off finger 3 from string 6 fret 3, lifting off pinky from string 1 fret 3, and then adding the first finger on string 3 fret 1 to form E7. So here's that G again, and here's the E7. Okay, so now I wanted to discuss another fingering of G that is very useful to know. And this G uses 4 fingers. Finger 1 on string 5 fret 2, finger 2 on string 6 fret 3, finger 3 on string 2 fret 3, and finger 4 on string 1 fret 3. And the pair of chords that I wanted to discuss that uses this G is this G going to D, and in which case you're moving finger 1 over to string 3 fret 2, moving finger 2 over to string 1 fret 2, and lifting off pinky. And finger 3 is the common finger between those two chords. So now you have this G to D. The other pair of chords I wanted to mention using this G would be this G going to C add 9, in which case you're leaving fingers 3 and 4 the same and just moving fingers 1 down to string 4 fret 2 and 2 down to string 5 fret 3 respectively. So here's that G, and here's the C add 9. As you see, fingers 3 and 4 did not move. The next pair of chords I wanted to mention with the common finger, you probably haven't seen this one as far as the common finger goes. You've heard this chord change, but many people might not know of this common finger. So this one is D to D minor, and in which case the third finger is common. So here's D, and then going to D minor, third doesn't move, and then first moves back to the first string, first fret, and the second moves over to the third string, second fret. So the next pair of chords I want to discuss that has the common finger between them would be B7, which we previously talked about, B7, to E minor, and in which case the second finger will be the common one. So here's B7, and then here's E minor. second finger was the common one. And this is another good example of a pair of chords that is important to go back and forth several times, because this E minor back to B7 is much harder than B7 going to E minor. And then lastly, I want to mention this B7 going to E major, and in which case the common finger again is finger 2. So here's B7 again, and then here's E major, finger 2 was the one that didn't move. So this sums up several pairs of chords with common fingers between them. And I hope this is useful for you. And if you like this, hit the like button. If you wish to subscribe, please hit the subscribe button. And we'll see you next time.